So thank you again, Claudia, for this session, this masterclass with Shopmatic. And this is our first session for August. And we are talking about the very important topic of how you can maximize social channels for e-commerce growth. As we were chatting earlier, social channels, especially the bread and butter channels like Facebook and Instagram, are great places to start doing organic activities, which can actually yield great results for your business with respect to building brands, attracting followers, and creating your own community, and sort of like creating your own sort of community of buyers, loyalists, evangelists, advocates, etc. But there is a method to the madness of how one should go about doing it smartly, and that is why we have Claudia here joining us and taking us through the best practices that she has put together with her extensive experience and knowledge on this particular topic, not just being a small business owner, a very successful small business owner herself, but also advising businesses like yourselves, as a part of what she does with great passion. So without much further ado, thank you so much, Claudia, and I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Uma. Thank you very much. So welcome, everyone. Our session today is on maximizing your social channels for growth. So for those of you that have attended all of my masterclasses, you would know that this is the 8th masterclass that I am hosting with the Shopmatic team. So thank you again also to the Shopmatic team for having me along again for another session. So for those of you who haven't joined me previously, I'll just introduce myself. So I'm Claudia North, co-founder of With Small Business. I'm actually a certified practicing marketer, and I've been in digital marketing and strategy for over 25 years. I've worked across Australia, New Zealand, Asia, as well as North America, and I've also founded my own e-commerce businesses. We started with small business to make expert e-commerce marketing advice affordable for small business owners globally. So today I'm going to briefly share with you our unique framework, which Uma was referring to a little bit earlier. And I'm going to, this has actually helped many small businesses that we've worked with grow their business online. I'm then going to introduce where the social content strategy actually fits into our framework. And then we're going to deep dive into this topic. So in the session today, we're going to be covering the following. So first of all, we're going to touch on, are you actually choosing the right social channels for your business? Next up, we're going to talk about defining your social media platform purpose, but we're going to focus in and hone in on Facebook and Instagram, but I'll also touch on a couple of the other platforms. Thirdly, we're going to define our content pillars and topic clusters. So I'm going to teach you how to actually think about your content in a more structured approach. And then finally, how do you actually apply that strategic approach to social content into like a day-to-day or a week-to-week content implementation on your social channels? As Uma mentioned earlier, we will have our Q&A session towards the end of the session tonight or today. So if you have any questions, please write them down or pop them in the Q&A box, and I'll definitely attend to those later in the session today. So before we get started, we'd just like to put a poll out to our registrations, our attendees. And I would just like to understand exactly what has been your approach to growing your social channels. So to get started, if you can please answer the question, which is, what has been your approach to growing your social channels? So you may have just been posting when you can, where you've got some time, you put a post together and you share it. Maybe you've actually got a social content strategy that has some structure and you have planning, forward planning, publishing and scheduling. And maybe you've got some social channels or not, and you're just currently not really utilizing them to support your business growth and awareness of your business. So if everybody can just answer the question, just click on whichever one is most closest to what you're currently doing with your social media.
All right, so I think people have been responding as you were speaking, Claudia. So it's responses starting to flow in here. We've got some information that we can share here. So 54% of them are actually saying that they post when they can. So I post when I can.
Okay.
That's what
Yes.
almost half of the participants today are sharing with us. And about 27% are saying that they do have a social content strategy. And the remaining are saying, and the remaining are sharing that they do not currently have, they're not using social media. So, there's an opportunity for them here. Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. I think everyone's answered. So we'll just sort of like move on and
Yeah, fantastic. Well done we've got about 30% of the people here that are already have a social content strategy. That is fantastic, because as small business owners, sometimes it's really hard to step back and start planning a strategy for these parts of your business. You will definitely get something out of today's session anyway. So without further ado, let's jump into, first of all, as I mentioned, we're going to touch on the framework. So I just wanted to give you some context on where social organic content actually sits in our e-commerce growth framework. So for those that have joined any of my previous masterclasses, you most likely recall this slide. I've previously discussed how important your foundations are when growing your online business, as they actually set you up to support the future growth of your business. So we've touched on a number of these foundations, and they actually lay the groundwork both for growth of your business, but also scaling your business. We've also used this framework with startups through to established e-commerce businesses that are turning over millions of dollars annually online. And this framework has not only simplified digital marketing for these business owners, but it's really shown to provide consistent growth over time. We've also noticed that the longer the businesses that we work with have actually committed to this framework, the more the revenue actually increases to new levels of growth consistently, rather than the peaks and troughs that you might see in your revenue when running ad hoc campaigns to drive revenue growth. So we highly recommend that you head on over to either Shopmatic's YouTube channel, or if you go to the Go Shopmatic website and click on the resources tab on the Shopmatic website, you can select webinars. And this is where you'll be able to find all the previous masterclasses, as well as the very first one that I did, which explains the e-commerce growth framework. So if you want to understand all the intricacies of the other foundations, please head over there. But tonight, as I mentioned, we're going to be focusing on maximizing your social channels for growth. And this is actually our sixth foundation with our e-commerce pillars. So first of all, I'm just going to share a quote with you, which is a little confronting, but when I read it, it did really resonate with me. And it's actually a quote from a marketer called Jason McBride. And he says, in your gut, you also suspect that social media is a bit of a scam. Well, you're wrong. Social media marketing isn't a bit of a scam. Social media marketing is a complete scam for most small and medium-sized businesses. Now, I know that sounds a bit harsh, but I do tend to agree, because I have worked with many small businesses that invest a significant amount of their time and money into their social organic channels without actually seeing a direct or a measurable return for their efforts. So don't get me wrong, social media is absolutely a necessary evil for small businesses. And the reason being is that social is really a really important channel for actually new audiences to be able to discover your brand. And so with 54% of customers using social research to find new products and brands, it is an absolute armory that you do need to have in your kit. So the question then comes down to, well, how can we effectively use social media to grow and deliver measurable results for our efforts? So there's actually a number of ways that we can make social media marketing more effective for your business. So similarly to our e-commerce growth framework, The way to maximize your social efforts is with a structured approach to your social content strategy. So rather than an ad hoc approach. So I know we've got about 54% of people in the room that do have an ad hoc approach. And trust me, most of the small businesses I work with, 80%, 90%, often are just posting when they can. And the challenge when we post just when we can is that we don't have a strategy. We don't know what are we wanting to achieve with our posts. And all of this time that we're investing in content and trying to come up with ideas, ultimately, you know, are we learning? Are we getting insights? Are we having an impact? So what we're going to cover today is a structured approach without overthinking, you know, a huge strategy. I want to give you some best practices and fast track the way that you think about your social channels. So first of all, you know, the first question is, you know, which channels are you using? So I really want you to think through today and reevaluate which channels you're using. Each of the social channels is actually beneficial for small businesses, but in different ways. So depending on what you're wanting to achieve with the particular social channels that you're using, for example, is it brand awareness? Is it business development? And each of these channels also have different skews in audiences. So the next thing we want to think about is channel purpose. So what is the purpose of the channels that you have actually selected? So are you wanting to generate sales? Are you building a community? Is it for customer service? The third component that we want to talk about today is key metrics. So what actual metrics are you using to measure your success? So if you think about advertising, when you spend money on advertising, for example, you expect a return on that, and you will be looking for, whether it's a direct return, you might be looking for traffic, you might be looking for, you know, downloads of an ebook, you might be looking for somebody to add your product to cart, or you might be looking for, you know, a conversion. So there are a number of metrics that you'll actually set. You'll set those objectives in your campaigns, or your advertising people will. We need to apply that same thinking to our organic content because it is a slightly different channel, and it needs to have key metrics to make sure that you're measuring for success and return on utilizing those channels. The fourth component is posting frequency. Now, this is a really interesting one. Many small businesses that I've worked with are rushing around trying to post every day, sometimes many times a day. So the algorithms actually reward consistency, not volume. So what this means is that we're looking for quality, engaging content that has a purpose, rather than any picture and caption that we're just throwing out there. So this is really important, and this is where you can start to look at what you're currently doing. How do you save time on your investment in your organic social content, and how do you actually turn it around to start delivering against some measurable objectives? And then the final component we're looking at is content direction. So this is going to include things like, what content themes are you actually trying to communicate? What content formats are going to work better on different platforms that you're utilizing? What content variations are you going to plan for different channels to actually meet the unique purpose of each of those channels? So we're going to do a bit of a deeper dive into each of these components. But before we do, I just wanted to pop up our second poll, which is, I'd like to understand how many social platforms are you actually using for your business? So if Uma, please bring up the poll, and if you can enter in one response. So you have only one, you have 2 social platforms that you're utilizing for your business, you have more than 2, or you don't have any.
Okay, so the poll's up and the responses are all coming in. I'm just going to give it a little time till everyone does it. Okay, I think top lines we have about, well, 14% are saying that they have only one. One third, 40%, the numbers are just jumping a little bit. So, okay, so 40% at this point in time are saying that they have two, and 47 are saying there's more than two. So yeah, no one is saying that they don't have any. So everyone's got something.
Okay.
Yeah, everyone's got something, which is
Great.
fantastic. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Emma.
Yeah. All right, let me just end this so you can carry on. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. So the response that I'm looking for here is 1 to 2. So 2 is ideal. Now, I know on the previous slide, we saw a lot of social media channels. We saw about 14, and they're not all of them. There are only some of them, which is crazy. But look, I highly suggest that you don't overcommit yourself to too many social channels. So as I said, I would recommend 2 as a maximum. If you absolutely have to have 3, that should be your maximum. However, it's going to be much better for you to have 2 strong performing social media channels that you give a plan to, a content plan, key metrics, and that you can actually set objectives and measure success, rather than spreading, across, 3 channels or more that aren't actually going to deliver results. Okay, so now that we've talked about, which channels you currently use, again, I would take on board what we're going to go through today. Potentially after this session, have a look at your channels and rationalize them if you have more than 2. Platforms also don't perform that well when you post the same type of content, the exact content across all of the channels, because each of them have better formats that perform. They have different audiences, and they also have different success metrics. So now just to go into a little bit more detail about those components that we talked about. So we're going to look at the purpose of these channels. So for example here, Facebook is a really good platform for building relationships. And this is similarly with Instagram. However, Instagram actually lends itself also to a much more sort of conversational type platform with their comments and direct messages and likes, etc. So you get a lot more engagement with your audience real time on Instagram. Pinterest is actually first of all, a search engine before it's a social platform, which is also similar to YouTube. So people actually use these platforms more as like a how-to research. How do I do something? Or I'm decorating my house. How do I, pick wallpaper, for example, that you'll find on Pinterest, and so on. So you can see here that each of the platforms definitely have a slight skew to the best use of that platform and the purpose of that platform. So next up, we've got key metrics. So once you've actually rationalized based on platform purpose and what you're trying to achieve for your company, once you've rationalized them, then the plan is to use moving forward the purpose of this channel for growing your business. And then we want to apply the key metrics that are going to ensure that you're using this platform as a tool which has objectives, as I mentioned earlier, just like using advertising. So we want to set the objectives and we're expecting a return. And when I say a return, it's not necessarily a monetary return. Of course, that's the ultimate objective, but it's a return for the effort. So if that is, engagement, brand awareness, lead generation, etc., that's what we want to look for with our organic content and our key metrics. So again, you can see here what each of the platforms are best for, such as building brand loyalty or brand awareness, lead generation, engagement, conversions, traffic, etc. So it's also important to consider the audience skews for each of the social media platforms. So again, you can see here that Facebook has a slightly older skew than Instagram. And Pinterest has 80% of their audience is women, so they have a really high proportion of females. There are also different tactics that you can apply to different platforms to grow your audience on Facebook. So Facebook tips to grow your audience, for example, is posting consistently with engaging content and boosting posts. So there's polls, there's a whole raft of different engagement tactics that you can use on Facebook. Whereas with Instagram, it's actually really important to be using hashtags because, again, Instagram, similarly to Pinterest and YouTube, also acts as, it's first of all social, but secondly, it is also a search engine in a way where you can search for content. And this is obviously done through hashtags. And so really important to use hashtags on Instagram and also engaging with your audience with comments. So with Instagram, the more real time that you can actually message and respond to comments or likes, etc., to your content, the more you will be rewarded by the algorithm for Instagram. And so finally, the fifth component that we talked about in actually structuring your approach to growing your channels is posting frequency. So as I mentioned earlier, when we're thinking about how often we post, it's about quality and consistency, not quantity. So you can see here, there's some suggested frequencies for posting content. Now, I would err on the side of the lowest number of posts for each of these platforms, depending which ones you're utilizing. So for example, once a week is ample on Facebook. If you're actually running a content strategy, which we're going to work through today, then one a week is completely fine. And ideally you do it on the same day. Once you start posting and understanding what the best time of day your audience is on the platform, when they're more engaging with your post more often, then just posting consistently on that day is fantastic in that your audience can start to expect it, they get into the routine, and the algorithm will also support your consistency in your posting. And just some final considerations in terms of structuring your approach. So here are actually some of the best practice tips for content development and planning. So you can actually include hashtags, which I talked a little bit earlier about for Instagram. So all of the platforms do use the hashtag feature. And you can see here that they all have different recommended numbers. And if you go over the numbers, the platforms actually rank your content a little bit as spam, as well as it can turn your audience off as well. So Instagram definitely has the most hashtags. All the others do, and they're absolutely a great tool to use to help discoverability of your content, your organic content on your social channels. So consider the best performing content formats as well for each platform, and then plan your content in those formats. So Facebook absolutely rewards video content. It still rewards photos or images, but video content is definitely the lead for Facebook. Instagram now rewards stories and even more so reels. So understanding, you can absolutely have a whole combination of, sharing articles and imagery, videos, etc. But definitely having a higher percentage of your post content being the one that platform favors will help increase the reach of your organic content as well. Okay, so moving on to our next agenda item, which is content pillars and topic clusters. So what are content pillars and topic clusters? So content pillars are the core topics of your business. Content pillars are basically like buckets that you can group similar themes or topics. So content pillars can be created and organized into consumable content for different target audiences. And then topic clusters are actually additional content that supports your content pillars. So your topic clusters actually provide the opportunity for you to expand on your content pillars or your content buckets. And this really allows you to address some aspects a lot more thoroughly. And so as much as your content pillars are definitely the main hub of your information, it's going to be your topic clusters that will ultimately attract your users, as the content is a lot more specific and niche. And what we do know in digital is that anything really specific and niche, when it connects with that particular audience, it certainly gives you results and engagement. So today I wanted to share a case study. So I'm going to use Frank Body as our case study to demonstrate how you can define your content pillars and your topic clusters. So for those of you that don't know Frank Body, it's actually an Australian natural skincare company. Frank Body actually started this unique beauty brand back in 2013. And really interestingly, the founders actually noticed a number of female customers at their Melbourne-based coffee shop coming in and asking for the leftover coffee grounds to use as an exfoliator. So with a small investment of around $5,000, they actually created a single product, their coffee body scrub. And they started to sell it through social media platforms, and they had no marketing budget. And then 5 years later, they were actually a $20 million business selling in over 156 countries. So in terms of their content strategy, they have done a phenomenal job in using content at a really authentic level to be able to engage their audience, which we're going to go through now. So if you're interested, obviously I'm going to go through a lot today, but absolutely following them on social, signing up to their email, and having a look at their content flow would be a great guide in terms of how to think about your content. So we're going to just run through their content pillars first of all. So the first content pillar for every company, so including yours, should be brand. So when we say brand, this is going to include things like your vision, your mission, your core values. And so if you want to understand a little bit more about the kind of content that you'd have in your brand, you can actually watch my second masterclass on fast tracking your brand for online growth. So make a note for that if you want to understand a little bit more around brand. But this is basically an example of some social content shared by Frank Body, where they donated 100% of the sales revenue for their most popular product during the month of January, actually last year, when we were having the terrible bushfires here in Australia. So what they're doing here is demonstrating what their brand stands for. So both in the donation to support bushfire relief across Australia, and as well as the empathy in their message. So, our hearts go out to our firefighters, our wildlife, our volunteers, and our home Australia. So they're really positioning what they stand for there, and letting you into a bit of their brand personality. So their next content pillar is ingredients. So when you review Frank Body's social media, you'll see that ingredients is a real core theme that's very, very strong, which definitely makes sense because based on the story that I just told you about how they started their business with coffee grounds as their first product, they've continued to build and branch out on that theme with other actually native Australian ingredients. So this is a really strong position for the company, and hence why it's a core content pillar. So you can actually see here on some of these posts, obviously you can see the coffee post, but they're also talking about in the top post here about eucalyptus, finger lime, and kakadu palm. So our third content pillar with Frank Body is actually skin and body, which is an obvious content pillar for a skincare company. However, what you can actually see here is the added value content that they produce and share on their social channels, such as education about layers of dead skin and the benefits of exfoliating with their creamy face scrub. They talk about skin survival tips for, the changes in season. And then the final one there is, what to do with stretch marks after pregnancy. So you can see here how they're touching on a number of different skin and body issues, and being able to connect with different audiences, with this kind of content. Now, their fourth pillar is a really interesting one, which is life and love. Now, this one might seem unrelated to skincare, which it is. However, Frank Body are extremely clear on who their target audiences are, and they are millennials and Generation Z. So they actually focus in on really relevant content on life and love for this generation. such as you can see here some examples of how to survive a holiday fling, an A to Z guide for modern dating, and anti-romantics guide to casual dating. So then our final content pillar for Frank Body is on health. And here you can see topics such as sleep, fitness, and skin conditions. So just be able to take you, take all of these examples and show you how you can start to structure your content. So I have a really simple table here with Frank Body's content pillars, which are along the top there. So you can see brand, ingredients, skin and body, health, and life and love. And then under that, you can see on the left-hand side, the detail of the topic clusters. So you can see under brand, vision, mission, values. One of their unique selling proposition is cruelty-free as well as Australian-made. So all of that kind of content fits under the bucket or into the bucket content pillar for brand. Ingredients you can see here, which we talked a little bit earlier: coffee, eucalyptus, finger palm, kakadu palm, and coconut palm. So really getting into all of the content and information around these ingredients. And then you can see skin and body, health, and life and love. So you can see here in this really simple table, when you take some time to think about what are those main buckets of content, so those content pillars that support your brand, that connect with your audience, not just on a product level, but connect in with a lifestyle level or a life stage level. And then when you break those down into some more detail, you can see here just how much content can be developed around so many topics. But this is actually done in a structured and strategic way, rather than I've got to get a post out today, what am I going to put out there? So to take the topic pillars, the content pillars and topic clusters to another level, which again, this might be something that you introduce a little bit later down the track, but I just wanted to give you the full extent of how you can actually plan out your content. So on this second table at the bottom here, so I actually call these on the left-hand side. So starting at the top, content pillars. So we've got our brand, ingredients, skin and body, etc. But down the left-hand side here, I've got what I call the 4 I's. So this is inspiration, information, ideas, and innovation. So basically you can apply these types of content to each of your pillars. So for example, with ingredients, you can talk about inspiration and lifestyle. So that one, they might talk specifically about, improving your skin with particular ingredients and have sort of lifestyle imagery. In terms of information, they might talk about how the ingredients, where it's grown, how they manufacture it, all of the benefits of each of those native ingredients. Ideas might be how to use those ingredients in a cocktail or in a smoothie. And then we've got innovation. So again, another concept for innovation. So if you actually look at multiplying your content pillars by your topic clusters and then introducing each of the 4 I's, you actually end up with a significant number of tactical content buckets that you can start communicating to your target audiences in. And if you take more of a structured approach like this, I'll show you shortly how we can map that out in a methodical way in terms of social content calendar. But when you take this approach, you can actually start testing different types of content pillars and topic clusters, as well as different types of content, like the lifestyle content, the information content, ideas, innovation, for example. And you'll start to find which content connects with different audiences. So if you've got 3 different target audiences, for example, again, you can overlay that view by each of the topic clusters. And what you might find is that 3, 4, or 5 of them might actually resonate a lot better with one of your target audiences, whereas some other content and might be more the ideas and innovation and different topic clusters connect with a different target audience. And that's what we're really looking for here. How we take, a bigger strategic view, and how do we bring it into an application in your day-to-day or your week-to-week social organic content, where you can start to get insights on what's really working, and you can put it against your objectives and your key metrics. So this is a pretty basic example, but I just wanted to show you, we've obviously talked about, which platforms, posting, like all of that structured approach. And then we've talked about, how do we think about content for our target audiences, for our social channels in a strategic way. This I wanted to show you how you can actually map out that content. So for example, this is a bit of a rough calendar. You could do this by week if you prefer. I've just done an example month on month. But for example, we've got brand on the left-hand side under content pillars. Then we've got our second pillar, third pillar, fourth pillar. And then under topic clusters, we've got our 3 topic clusters. So you might have 2, you might have 6. So you can just adjust those rows depending on how many you actually have. And then you can see these blue boxes, how they actually are in a pattern, so they're methodical. So what we want to do is, if we've got 2, we'll just have 2 of those blue boxes. If we get 6, we'll continue those down on a diagonal. So what that means is we've got an actual method of when we're going to post that content. So what this does is, if you did a bit of a summary for month 1, what you know is that you've got 4 different topics that you're going to talk about in month 1. So you'll be talking about, for brand, you'll be talking about topic cluster 1. For your second pillar, you'll be talking about topic cluster 1, and so on. And so that then starts to give you, it shows you how you can build in your social content calendar and how you start to plan out your posts, but how that actually feeds back up into your strategic framework. So just moving on to our poll now, I wanted to ask the question, hopefully now you've got a better understanding of how to plan your social organic content, how to think about it in a strategic and a measurable way. I'm hoping that some of you today are going to be able to walk away and go, wow, I've got a number of hours back in my week because I don't need to stress about posting every single day on all these different platforms. But so I'd love to understand from what you've learned in this session today, how are you going to plan on growing your social channels now based on what you've learned in this session? So some of you might still, you might find this a bit overwhelming, so you're just going to continue to post when you can. Hopefully a number of you will want to develop a social content strategy around the structure I went through today. And for those of you that aren't using social media, hopefully there's been a lot of information in this session that will give you the confidence to get started, but get started in a planned and structured way. Now, I know I've covered a lot in this session today, but you will have the recordings, obviously, both on YouTube and on the Shopmatic platform. So you can definitely sit down and start from the beginning. You can pause the slides where we've got, all of the content on each of the different platforms and the audiences and posting frequencies, etc. So hopefully there's a bit of a plan there that you can pick up and follow to help you save time on social media, as well as get more focused on making them work harder for you.
Okay, great. So let me just quickly share with you. Not everyone has answered, but of the people who have answered, everyone has said that they will develop a social content strategy. So,
yay!
So that's a good news. However, there are some people who probably are, wondering how far they can commit and stick to it. Well, we would encourage you to definitely start small, take the baby steps first, get started so that even if it means that you will only post when you can, if there is some strategy or some thinking behind it, it gets you on a good roll with respect to knowing what you will post and how you will post, etc. So it can still be only when you can, but get started on a strategy so that then once you really have a like a full plan worked out, then you can really sort of like adopt everything that we have sort of like shared today, and really have a full
Yes.
plan. Right?
I
Yeah.
was just going to say, Uma, I've just put up the Q&A side, but my email address is there, and obviously my website with my email address. If you would prefer the original slides where I've got the 6 different channels and I go through the purpose and key metrics and all of that kind of stuff, I'm happy to share that in a PDF form if that's easier for you to work through. So feel free to email me if you would like that, and I can absolutely share that with you to make that process a little bit easier for you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Claudia. Thank you so much for that. Okay, great. So again, a great session as always with you, Claudia. So thank you so much for running this particular topic, and it brings us closer to the action that one can take with respect to marketing, and how we can sort of like start with organic activities very easily using social media before we go on to sort of like paid activities, etc., which will be the upcoming topics. So before we sort of like let you go, we are here at the Q&A session now, so we'll just sort of like start looking at the various queries that are coming our ways.